Speaking of the blame game, I mean the plight of mine workers in Marikana, 12 years since the Marikana Massacre still remains. This is where 34 miners were killed by the South African Police Service on the 16th of August 2012 during a 6-week wildcat strike. I'm joined now by Zwelinzima Vavi, General Secretary of the South African Federation of Trade Unions. Zwelinzima Vavi, thanks very much for your time this afternoon. So 12 years on, we're still talking about the same things. We're still complaining about the plight of workers. We're still complaining about unfulfilled promises. We're still talking about people who have been left in the lurch.
I had an honor yesterday of being part of that commemoration. And just on your way into that dusty, poverty-stricken, totally neglected community of thousands and thousands of workers who are taking wealth for a multinational company, which is one of the wealthiest in our country and all over the world, you see the true meaning of what Bane Pichana would have said in 1971, black men, you are on your own. The neglect, the total disregard of human dignity, the lack of infrastructure, the squalor, the conditions that are inhabitable. In fact, the coincidence yesterday was that communities were telling us that there has been no electricity in Marikana since Wednesday, which they thought that was something to do with a sabotage of the commemoration itself. It's incredible that all of us know that what drove those workers into a 5-month strike without pay, the determination to sacrifice everything, was that they were driven by not only the working conditions, but the living conditions around their mines. I find it absolutely disgusting that the mine bosses, Sibanye, have done absolutely nothing about those living conditions. All of the promises that there would be houses built has been failed. All of the promises that the conditions around the mining town itself will be improved have not come to anything. And people are living under the conditions that led to them deciding that the only way out of that was the 12,500 minimum wage. What a shame that the government and the local government in that area has not sought to put pressure on Lon Min now Sibanye to do something about those living conditions, to build, even if it is just small family flats and houses and those type of things. It's a shack upon another shack. It's dusty. There is nothing that looks like a tarred road. Driving to the point of the massacre itself, it takes you 30 to 45 minutes on a gravel road, a journey that ordinarily you could do in 7 minutes. What a shame. I mean, we've learned nothing. The Lon Min Sibanye have learned, the government have learned absolutely nothing from that disaster and from that massacre. If there's anything, I see history repeating itself again.
Can you really talk a bit about lessons for the government and the government putting pressure on Lon Min when you can hardly speak of that episode without invoking the name of the president?
Absolutely.
And
The
of course, the
president
ANC, when former President Jacob Zuma was in charge, because it was during his tenure that it happened.
You know, the tragedy about this whole issue about the ANC factions is that none of them will want to accept that all of them, the leadership of the ANC as a whole, the government, and the president, whilst he was still a director, must shoulder the blame of that massacre, all of them. The president, in his capacity then as the director, penned an email. He called those workers dastardly criminals. He called on the state to take concomitant action, which is a meaning of a very strong action. And this ANC government, so keen to please the lawmen, a multinational corporation from London, did not hesitate to tell its police to do everything that they can to stop that strike. They called it, as we heard from the Falam Commission, there was a talk of D-Day, and the D-Day became the 16th of August, 2012, when the police came with hundreds of thousands of live ammunition, with mortuary vans ready to load bodies of the mine workers, with lethal R5 weapons, which the Falam Commission says should have never formed part of the crowd control in a civilized society under a democratic government and under a democratic constitution that puts in the front the rights, the human rights of everybody. The government planned the massacre, and under the president Jacob Zuma, who would not put pressure on lawmen to say, guys, go and negotiate with these guys. It's been 5 months now of a strike. Who didn't say to to lawman director, Cyril Ramaphosa, you use your experience. You are the one who inspired those workers to form the NUM in the first place. All your life, you have been negotiating on their behalf. Can you use your skills now, even if you are on the opposite camp, to talk to them directly? You should know some of its leaders. Talk to them. He didn't say that. He jumped to comply and to plan a massacre, to plan a murder. There's no doubt about that now, that the D-Day referred to, that the state have drawn a line in the sand to say to the workers, we will choose the side of the multinational corporation, not your side calling for a minimum wage of 12,500. We are choosing the side of the capitalist class, not of you, the rock drillers, whose hands and knees were bleeding from walking in a workplace of just 1.5 meters in length and in a sweltering heat and carrying a 25 kilograms heavy machine, drilling machine. They decided, and we're saying in our statement, on that day, the ANC government lost all of the pretense of it being a working class biased organization. They chose the side of capital. They chose the side of profit maximization. They ignored their core constituencies, the working class, what they refer to as the motive forces of the revolution throughout the liberation struggle. They didn't side with them. They decided to side with those that were exploiting them brutally before 1994 for many hundreds of years, and those who continue to exploit them up to this day. The state lost its honesty on that day, and it stands accused in the minds of many, many millions of South Africans. And yet these guys, when the accumulative effect of that massacre in Marikana the shooting of our people in Mkhutlong, the shooting of Andres Dadana in the Free State, the brutal handling of peaceful demonstrations all over the country. They can't see the relationship between all of that arrogance and power or display of mighty power of the state against workers and protesters in terms of what it meant to the 2024 national election, where they dropped by 17% of the vote. It's an accumulative effect of neglect. There's no water in Marikana. There's nothing. There is absolutely nothing. You can eat dust there, literally. Workers were saying yesterday, we die underground, and when we go up, we inhale the gases that sentences us to a slow death. We go up to the surface. The living conditions are slowly taking us to the grave. That just one more point.
But
I was having a discussion.
We have run out of time, but I can end this conversation without having asked you this. But wouldn't you also say that 12,500 struggle was worth it? Yes, it wasn't worth the deaths. It came at a huge price. And yes, the workers today may still be very far from, things may still be very far from the ideal, but there was a victory that was registered there nonetheless, even though the price was heavy to pay.
Absolutely. Look, the rock drillers were earning somewhere around the region of 6,000, 7,000. And they demanded 12,500. Over a period of 5 years, they attained that demand. They are now earning about 16,000. And since the 2012 massacre, mine bosses have been forced to concede that no increase must be less than 1,000 rands every year. The 16,000 that is now a national minimum wage there, or minimum wage, is without adding benefits. So the lives have improved from that perspective, even though that 16,000 or 18,000 today is all being wiped out by the prices of electricity, the prices of municipal services, the transport, the food prices, all of that simply wipes every gain that workers makes every day. But it is important to note that sometimes we die in a struggle. We make sacrifices of 5 months of a no work, no pay. But the impact of that is felt across the economy. That 12,500 is still a demand SAFTU is pursuing, inspired directly by the Marikana strike. The fact that just a few years after the massacre, the government agreed to introduce a national minimum wage, which is now standing around 4,000 and just above 4,000. It would have not been there if there was no massacre. That the farm workers revolted against a 66 rand working day in Ditwarens and other farms in the Western Cape, and forced the commission dealing with issues of their conditions of employment to increase their salaries to above 150 rands a day. Was thanks to that strike, and the impact is still felt all over the country, and that's why we call that strike as having been a watershed moment.